Very good. Shalom, everybody. We continue with our classes on Zionism, and I'm still in Jacob. Uh, Very briefly, we say that according to Ezekiel, the sources of the Israelites and the Judahites are from the Amuru, from the Amorites, that they came from Mesopotamia, from the Hittites. We have the tradition from the Jews coming from Egypt, and we know for sure that 3,000 years ago, Jerusalem, Zion is the capital of Israel. So we can speak about Zionism or Judaism for 3,000 years. This is no doubt. The question is, before we have traditions in the Bible of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and these traditions are much older. We saw already that in 1205, Mer Neftach, 1205 BCE, right? Mer Neftach say, I destroyed Israel, and Israel is designed as a people. So there's already a people of Israel 3,200 years ago by the Egyptian sources. But our tradition, it goes much back on time. And we say that the Amuru started expanded about 2,000 years before the Common Era. So we placed in the beginning the figures that are quoted in the Bible, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, somehow in the 18th centuries BCE. So we're talking about Zionism that is never stopped, the presence of the Jews in the land of Israel, but it's not 3,000 years old, it's closer to 4,000 years old. The way that the Bible presents the history is in a way of a tradition. So when, for example, they say that Jacob is the brother of Esau, it means that the Israelites, that's the northern kingdom, they have connections actually with the Edomites, that is southern in the other side of the Jordan. And even the Bible say that the Edomites are our brothers. That's why you're not supposed to hate an Edomite. The Bible presents Abraham connected to Lot, to Moab and Ammon. So it's one family that ties connections of Judah with the other side of the Jordan, but not in the south. So by the year 1200, more or less, we start having two kingdoms. In the north, the kingdom of Israel, the larger one, that's why it's 10 tribes, and in the south, the kingdom of Judah. And we were last week saying that the Bible told us about Jacob founding cities, and the same route that Jacob built these cities is what we see in the year 924, when there is a campaign from Egypt, from King Shoshek, conquering the lands and attacking again the kingdom of Israel more than in the south, and we explained this. I wanted to talk today a little bit about Jacob and the name Jacob and the name Israel. We found the name Yaakov only in older sources. For example, there is the Nusi tablets. The Nusi tablets is what today is Iraq. It's one of the cities there. And the Nusi tablets are from the 14th, 15th centuries BCE. If you remember last week, I mentioned also the denomination of the Hapiru. And the Hapiru, they were in the Amarna tablets, more or less the 13th and 14th centuries. But 100 years early, we found the name Yaakov in the Nusi tablets. And we see in these tablets, I just wanted to make sure that you are with me. There is two types of writings, ancient types. One is the cuneiform. You take a clay and you make signs, looks like arrows, and you bake the clay, and you have the tablets, and they stay for a long time. Try to think if you have some, I don't know, a glass of clay, put it in the oven, stay for long. So the same, the tablets can have it for thousands of years. The other type of scripture we have it in Egypt is the hieroglyph. There's the hieroglyph is from the Greek is sacred carving, because the Egyptians saw that this kind of writing is on temples. So that's what they say. This is the way that you carve, you write on temples. That's why we call it hieroglyphs. So in Nusi we have, like in Mesopotamia, these clay tablets that survive in many archives. One of them is from the city of Nuzi, and this is 14 and 15. Not only that we find the name of Jacob, but also that there are many customs. They are very similar to what the Bible describes of Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, and the laws with servants and things you can do. So we have a realia of a kind of reality that it fits Jacob for the 15th century. Also on the founding of the cities, because the cities has to be before Israel is already a nation, and 1205 BCE. So we can put Jacob more or less on, because this name doesn't appear later. It's an old name that is not reused. People have used names and they are not in fashion anymore. Yaakov is one of them. I want to say something about the name Yaakov. After this, the name is changed to Israel, right? And the Bible told us everything as stories, just stories that we are narrating to the next generation. Yaakov El and Israel is actually the same. Why? Because the root Yaakov is Ain Kuf Bet. It can be also akum, also like curve, but also can be right. For example, we have Parashat Ekev, Vaya Ekev Tishmeun. If you follow my laws, says the Torah, Ekev. If you follow straight my laws. So Ekev, also when the akev is the part of the foot, what's it, the ankle? The ankle. When you put an akev on the ground and another one, you make a pattern, you can follow them. You can follow this akevot, this foot printings. So beikvot is to go follow straight. Now, Israel, the sin and the shin in biblical times interchange. So Israel is Yashar El. Israel is the one that goes straight, follow El, the God. And Yaakov El is the same. Yaakov is the person that follows straight the God. So we have also the sin and the shin interchange in the name Yeshurun. Jacob is called sometimes in the Bible and the people of Israel are called Yeshurun, not is lo Isharel, ela Yeshurun. Un will be the theophoric part instead of N. El. So the name Yaakov and the name Israel, they are not only that interchange, is a kind of saying that we are the same people. First, we were called in the name of Yaakov, Yaakovel. But now, with the centuries, we changed and we call ourselves now Israel, Isharel, but it's actually the same name. One more thing I want to say, and then I conclude my part. We founded also the name Yaakov as one of the Hyksos kings. Now, in the 16th century, again, this is the realia of our ancestors at the very beginning. We know in the 16th centuries, the Canaanites that they're living in the land of Israel, slowly they're moving to Egypt and then become power. The, the, the ancient Egyptians called them the Hyksos. The Hyksos are the foreigner rulers. And only in the 18th dynasty in Egypt, they managed to liberate themselves from the ruling of the Hyksos that ruled the land of Egypt for about 150 years. So one of the kings of the Hyksos, this is the Canaanites that control Egypt in the 6th and 16th centuries, is Yaakov. So I don't say it's the same Yaakov. I say maybe it's a popular name at that time, but the realia that we found the name also in Mesopotamia, also in Egypt, only in this time, I will say 15 centuries more or less, it's very compatible to what the story of the Bible is telling us as a tradition, not as an history book, but as a narration that you have to tell your children, generation to generation. So with this, I'm going to pass the microphone. And I didn't show maps today or monuments, but I hope it was clear.
It was clear and certainly adds. I've never heard the idea, but it makes sense that in some senses, Yaakov and Yisrael are the same name, and there are many who describe the two as being any of us and just the development of the person, right? That that there's some Yaakov and Israel in each of us.
And I give you the microphone, but let's say the blessing together.
Yes,
Now we'll have people.
good.
Baruch atah
Ata Adonai Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav
וציוונו
v'tzivanu
לעשות
la'asok
בדברי
b'divrei Torah.
תורה. Okay.
Thank you for that reminder.
Yes.
Thank you. And welcome to Mom and Ted and Gilshan. I guess made it home, or not quite yet. So we've talked a little bit about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and this week, moving along in the understanding of Zionism. So we talk a little bit about Jacob having had 12 sons who become the 12 tribes. Here are their names, and each name has its meanings. And if any that, so I'm going to continue I'm going to just show very briefly. And this is called Loving Torah by Rabbi Avi Weiss. and he describes some of the meanings of names, so that Re'u in Reuven, Re'u reflects empathy, or the name Levi uh, reflects the concept of escorting or being together with, as the Jews are together with each other, this group. And when we describe the 12 tribes, so while Joseph is one of the 12 sons, the inheritance will go not to Joseph, but will go to both of his sons. And one of the interesting things about the sons in terms of our Zionism is that the division of the land among the tribes in the book of Joshua forms the first historical map of the Israel homeland. And we still have areas in Israel which are called Naphtali, where the Kinneret is, or Menashe, where Kibbutz Gal Ed, Hare Menashe, they're right next to us, close to Haifa, and so on, and of course Judea. So Zionism sees these tribes as a national structure of the Jewish people. And we have different groups, and that's kind of the essence of the 12 that come up today. The covenant, of course, to the land continues when God promises Jacob, the land that I gave Abraham and Isaac, I give to you and your offspring. Okay, meaning us, meaning the 12 sons. And land, unfortunately, back then was not given to daughters, but there was also a daughter, and her name was Dinah. Her name meaning Din, judgment, with the Hey meaning God's judgment or God's merciful judgment. So Zionism has this idea of various exiles after the Romans, but then a rebuilding and a returning. And one way to look at the 12 sons is that when there was a famine, they went down to Egypt and they never came back. And Bible describes their sojourn outside of Israel as lasting 400 years, but always expecting to come back, so that Joseph said, when you go back, bring my bones back and bury them in Israel. And the tradition continued, so that indeed, when the Jews left Egypt, they carried Joseph's bones to be buried back in Israel. And Kever Yosef is not far from Jerusalem today. So the tribes represent this original Jewish nation, and they emphasize that on the one hand, we Jews have a shared origin, we have a collective destiny, and we have an indigenous connection to the land. And the modern symbolism that many Zionist thinkers referred to is they reference the 12 tribes as proof that Jews are not just, I shouldn't use the word just, but this is what was written, just a religion, but that Jews are a nation. And there have been discussions since forever, are we a religion, or are we a people, or are we a nation? And the answer to that question is yes. We are a nation as well as Jewish being a religion. The very word Jew comes from Judah or Yehudah. Yehudah is Judah, and it's the name from which the word Jew comes. So there is a early Zionist art that portrays the tribes returning to the land of Israel and regathering of the tribes. And some modern Zionist or Jewish thinkers see the return of world Jewry to Israel as a partial fulfillment of the prophetic visions of the ingathering of the exiles. The ingathering of exiles in Hebrew is kibbutz galuyot. There's a street called kibbutz galuyot in pretty much every city of Israel. Some of the specific tribes and their modern Zionist ideas, including Judah, as I mentioned, is the source of the words Jew, Judaism, and Zionism sees the modern state as the continuation of Judah's ancient sovereignty. Judah was in Jerusalem, and Judea includes Jerusalem, and that's where the sovereign or the king sat. Ephraim and Menashe, or the northern tribes, or the kingdom of Ephraim, is that some Zionist thinkers speculate about the descendants returning from foreign nations. I might point out in the news this past week that the government of Israel budgeted a 5-year, I think $90 million dollar or shekel budget to bring back from the foreign nation of India those people who are called Bnei Menashe, and those are Jews by tradition who want to come back to Israel. And there are, I'm going to get it wrong, but I think there are some 6,000 who now are hoping to come and will be resettled. And they were directed to be resettling gradually. And in Nof HaGalil, which is the Jewish city next to the city of Nazareth. And there's also, of course, the one of the 12 sons is Levi, which is the priestly tribe, and it's connected to the priests and the temple traditions. And he is the symbol of spiritual continuity. And of course, we have lots of people today who are named Levi, Levi, Levi. In many ways, the word Levi appears in their last names to suggest that they are still a part of the priestly tribe, including the Kohanim among them. How Zionism uses the 12 sons or the 12 tribes concept is that Zionism does not claim to restore the tribal system, but uses the legacy as a hysterical legitimacy that we formed a nation in the land during the period of the tribes, long, long before the rise of most modern nations. And the 12 tribes symbolize diversity within unity, parallel to the diversity of modern Jews worldwide returning to Israel. And the connection to Jerusalem, which is where Mount Zion is, as described all the way back to Bible, is that several tribes, especially Judah and Benjamin, control the Jerusalem area, which anchors the Zionist claims to Jerusalem as the spiritual center. So although Zionism is in some ways a modern political movement, it draws heavily on these ancient biblical roots. The 12 sons are the first expression of Jewish peoplehood. The covenantal promise continues. The settlement map in which the land of Israel is spaced is directed, and Joshua tells each tribe where they're going to be, is a map of ancient Israel overlapping where we are right now. And the later longing for return is a continuous national memory preserved through exile. So Zionism sees the modern return to Israel as a renewal, not something that begins now, but the nation as a nationhood that began with Jacob's 12 sons. Now, the question that I put forward in this week is how you see the nation and the diversity of Israel. We know that there are many different, we could call them tribes now. Our most recent past president of Israel, Ruby Rivlin, liked to talk about the tribes of Israel. The tribes he described were the modern Orthodox, the Haredi, the secular, the Masorti, and those are all diverse parts of a nation. But how the diversity establishes us as a nation and not just a religion, and how you see the diversity in the nation of Israel, including, I agree, there are plenty of not getting along so well, but but we have these diverse populations within us. How you see the diversity of Israel as part of our nationhood and as part of our Zionism. I hope that's somewhat clear. And Gershon, you'll be first, and Flores will be next.
Okay, I'm not quite sure what I'm answering exactly. Sorry. How do
You
I
want
see?
a clarification. How are you doing with the diversity
Okay.
that leads your Zionism? Not everyone believes the exact same as you
Uh-huh. Uh,
or me.
Far from it. I consider it a beautiful thing in some ways, that we come from such uh, diverse backgrounds. I mean, one thing it made me think of was the first week or so in Ulpan, uh, some 18 and a half years ago. And I had to go home and turn on the computer and start looking up where these places were that these people came from, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan. I mean, I knew they were former Soviet Union, but I didn't know what they had become. Ukraine as a biggie. And so aside from those, I mean, I didn't have Ethiopians in our class, although they were there in the absorption center where the Olpan was. They had their own classes since they came from such a different background. And sorry, and overall, it just make me appreciate that we are not all, Ashkenazi Jews with a few Sephardim scattered in that I would encounter in the U.S., but that we were really a small number worldwide, but we were everywhere. It made me feel good that we can bring this together into a sometimes unified effort. we're at least unified in survival. Let's put it that way.
Very much so. So those are the components of a nation. Yes, we do seem to have Jews, and we could say today also Israelis, Israeli Jews in all 200 countries, in all 200 nations, if that's the number of nations we have today. Flores, how are you doing with the diversity of our nation?
I never realized that I was in diversity because it was so normal. In Britain, it's a smaller country. So I was from London, and our chief rabbi, a couple of the chief rabbis were from Germany. They came over before 1939 or 36 or something. So there was already an influence of a different people. And being so much smaller, you came across them in synagogue. We would also visit Israel many, many times. We would come in December during the Christmas holidays. And I was aware that if you were in Jerusalem, it was predominantly people that came from Germany, because if you went to the bank, they always had suits on and a tie, and it was completely different. And when you went to Tel Aviv, it was completely different. So, and then we had friends in Haifa, and we'd come to Haifa and we'd see different people. So I think I wasn't aware until it's now looking at it that it's a diversity. But Jews not getting on was what I grew up with. You know, there was family dynamics. My mother wouldn't talk to my father's family. And when I met the cousins, I said, "What was it?" She said, "I don't know. But all I know is I wasn't allowed to talk to you, and I wasn't allowed to talk." So I think it's innate in Jews not to get on with other people, with other Jews. But I don't think it's a deep running thing. I think it's always superficial because whenever there's trouble, we don't remember what we don't like. We get together. And then once that's gone, we go back to how we were. So I don't think that's problematic because underneath it, Jews look after Jews.
Jews look after Jews. Most of the time and in different ways. I would emphasize, for instance, to prove your point or to support your point, that those Jews who do not serve in the army in providing that kind of support to other Jews do that from a perspective that they say their prayer and their carrying on of Torah is what supports us most of all. So it's not like they want to tear down or that they want the country to be overrun, but rather that the way they want to support the nation, the diverse nation, is in their way rather than in the way of the military. So we agree that Jews do look after other Jews as a nation, as holding ourselves together. Liz, like to hear from you. And then Michael, you get ready.
Just a second. Well, what's interesting is just this last Shabbat when I was with my son and his family, the 7.5-year-old asked me if I was Ashkenazi or Sephardi. And, I hadn't really thought about that. And I was more curious as to, why he was even asking. And I pointed out to him that, by my parentage, I was Ashkenazi, but his mother is from Sephardi people, and that I didn't get into the even other distinctions that there are because
Yes.
he wouldn't understand. But it just seems that, in terms of like what Flores was saying about people getting along with other members of the tribe, we've all heard the expression, two Jews, three opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many different ways, to look at things. And maybe the third reason, third opinion was the compromise. So it's interesting to think, and, like I would have no way of knowing which tribe, although it would be interesting to be able to find out. But I wouldn't be able to find out, what tribe I had come because it had been through Eastern, European. And when I did the ancestry testing, it said I was 100% Eastern European Ashkenazi Jew. And so I don't know how they, use that kind of determination, but it's interesting. And that's really all I got to say.
Well, that's the genetics, and I like that the third opinion is compromise. I knew that there were at least three opinions. In terms of which tribe is your origin, So I would point out the significance of that, that when we go to synagogue and are called up to the Torah for prayer, so as a rule, we have a first call up for a Kohen, a Levi, and then the rest are considered Yisrael. So those people who are still called, their name is Cohen, apparently go way back to the Levi tribe.
But
And
right, they're part of the
Levites,
Levi tribe, right?
yes, exactly. And they're like the 10% of the well, it's not exactly 10% because they're one of 12, but they are that part of the Jewish nation. And I would say that the words, because Edgar made a good point about how the words sometimes are the same and change. So the words for Sephardic Jews have changed. And initially it was Sephardic, Sfarad being Spain,
But now they have Mizrahi.
but now um Jews of that tribe, no, it's much more than one tribe, a prefer to be considered Mizrahi, which means Eastern, as opposed to Western, even though perhaps they didn't come from further east, like Yemen, Iraq, Iran, but maybe they came from Africa, from North Africa, from Morocco or Libya or Egypt, and so on. So the title for that. But I might point out that our modern Hebrew is Sephardic. That's what we speak. There is a possibility, and there are those who still speak in Ashkenaz, which sounds that much more like Yiddish, so that a taf is an S sound, and so on. So those are how these tribal things are continuing. But I would just throw in again that the nationhood spans countries. And so we are of the same nation of Jews in Morocco and New York. And
Right. At some point, we all lived a lot closer, and then they spread.
they spread and came together and spread, came together. The at least partial expulsion or migration of the 12 sons lasted by some biblical account as long as 400 years, and then recoalesced back in the land that each of them had attributed to them or dedicated to them way back by Joshua. Michael, and then we're going to go to New York.
Okay. A few things historical.
Good.
During a period of weakness, the Hyksos came into Egypt and ruled and eventually were kicked out. They were part of a group of people known as the Sea People. The Sea People, we probably even realize. The Philistines. That's one that we definitely know who they were. So during this time, we all wind up eventually leaving. We get exiled multiple times. 10 tribes are exiled. They've been lost to history. Next group is exiled, but returns. The Assyrians had a method of you take captives, take them away from their land, break them up. Maybe they'll survive, but in most cases they didn't. We did. Eventually we go back to our own country, but we, I think, have left out a major part of our history, which may explain why we're all over the world. There is something called the Elephantine Papyrus. It's a place in Egypt.
Yes, Southern Egypt.
Jews went there. We have correspondence from them. So we know they existed in a certain period of time. This is how we figure out that the Ethiopian Jews are actually related. All of these groups get cut off because they're no longer in Israel or where we all continued in Judea. And their traditions don't have the Talmud. because they were cut off from history. We know that Jews were mercenaries in Egypt. We know that they were merchants. We also know from Roman history, one of the reasons that we had to be destroyed, Rome was a economic empire, and anybody that got in their way was going to be destroyed. There was a group called the Nabateans. They too were merchants. They uh, of that, which you've probably been to. So we were merchants. We went all over. Some of these people stayed there. So when you sometimes meet the people decades later, you say, big deal. I grew up, I had a friend who actually came from the Caribbean. And I asked him, we was talking about something, and I said, you're Jewish. And from his last name, you would not know. He said, yeah, we trace it back to my wife's first cousin. The cousin was getting married, had a boyfriend. Nobody met him. And everybody made all these assumptions. He was Greek. His family were Orthodox Greek Jews that survived the Holocaust. So this is all growing up. I had a friend who was from, her family migrated from Turkey. She traces her heritage back to Spain. So growing up, I knew from all these different groups. It was nothing new. It was also, I learned about it in history, that we're referred to in ancient Assyrian cuneiform documents as they conquered the cities and they referred to Jews in it. And related to why the problem comes up with names, linguistically, if a sound doesn't exist in your language, how do you render it? And the easiest example that I can come up with is Caesar, Tsar, Kaiser, all the name for Caesar, because it did not exist. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, alphabet, the Gamma. Well, some letters exist. We didn't have a theta. So if we want to say a word with a TH in modern Hebrew, you have to render it with a specific letter. So that's the reason we went. There was a group called Abiru. P's and B's get interchanged in a lot of languages. Chinese, Friedleise. They can't say an R, so they say an L. We had in our own tradition. Shibboleth, how did you know where somebody came from? Sibolet or Shibboleth? That was our own group of people in antiquity. This is how you knew where you came from. So there was always this diversity because each group was influenced by the culture that was closest to them. If you were all the way up north, you were more influenced by Ugarit and the Ugaritic culture. If you were closer to one end of the country, you may have been picking up terms from their language. Like, why do we have terms in Hebrew today? They're all Arabic. Sababa. It's not Hebrew, but every Israeli knows it.
Yes.
So these are all factors that played into it. We migrated. And once we were taken captive by the Romans. We were brought in. Well, what did we have as a great background? Merchants, traders. So we went to all these different countries. And eventually we stayed there. And as history played out, some countries allowed us in when other countries kicked us out.
Sure. So that's our
So, I
nationhood.
mean, so being a historian, what you're bringing up is common. You
Yes.
had at a certain point, I
What
don't
is
know anybody.
uncommon is that the people, the nation of Jews, after such a long dispersion, so many, almost half of the nation, have recoalesced back in our initial land. And that, of course, has so much to do with Zionism.
About
Let's
400
go to
years.
New
Oh,
York and let's hear
I
what
put one
they
last
have to
thing
say
in.
there.
All I was going to say is if somebody wants to read something interesting, it's called The Travels of Benjamin of Tudela. He travels to all of the, basically most of the world, about 400 years ago. And what was he looking for? Jews. And he reports on Jews in all these different countries.
Okay. Mom, Ted, how are you doing with nationhood? You have to first unmute yourselves, otherwise you can't be heard. Can you find the unmute button? There you go. You succeeded.
Okay.
Hey, you go first, Bev. You know that.
Um, I think that the diversity is good. I think that's in principle, I think diversity is good because it comes up with new ideas, new all the advantages of diversity. However, I don't think that the people uh, are ready for it. I think that they are too possessive of what they have. They do not have open minds. Um, I'm for letting everybody deal with their Judaism in their own way. For some, it's prayer. For some, it's painting Jewish things, objects. For some, it's nothing. Do nothing. I was born Jewish and that's it. Uh, and and I think that Jews are not taught broad acceptance of other Jews. I think that even the children in camp, those on the left and those on the right, have, you know, wars between them. I think thinking that all Jews are brothers and sisters, and you just accept people for what they are, would be the way to go. And that will come first before, and it's a long ways in coming, because I don't see people on the left and the right and the observant and not observant really being tolerant of each other. There's no real tolerance. Everybody is taught a way, and that's um, and their way is correct. I think every way is correct, and maybe when Mashiach comes, I'm looking forward.
Hmm.
Um, that's really what I have to say, is that we are intolerant, and until we become more tolerant of ourselves as a group of Yemenite, Ethiopian, Ashkenazi, whatever, unless we become more tolerant and accepting, the nations will not be accepting. And And that's part of the struggle. It's an opportunity and a challenge. And let's see if we rise to the opportunity. I'm really finished.
Okay, Ted, how are you going to
Well,
deal with Jewish nationhood and the 12 tribes?
what did Jesse say?
I don't know. We ask him.
I didn't get you, Jesse.
How do you feel that there being 12 different tribes forming one nation
Well, I think
informs or affects your Zionism?
uh, I think I think Bev expressed the concept very well. It certainly makes no difference to me where you came from. And I think Israel is a wonderful, it comes as close as any nation uh, to treating diversity as a has-been way of thinking, and that we're um, I think for me, the technicality of the differences means nothing philosophically, and all Jews should consider themselves as one Jewish nation. No two people even are exactly the same. So my feeling is that it fits into the concept of democratic thinking. And that matters to me more than any technical features. We're all different. We're all individuals. And if you're of the same faith, that's good enough for me.
Well, that's great. And I think in
Can I
trying
come in? Can I come in with something?
Sure.
About, well, we concentrating on Jews, but I saw in England how Christianity, you had the Catholics and the Protestants, and in Europe you had 100 Years' War, which was a religious thing. You had the Lutherans, and so they had more trouble. Our trouble is family trouble, yes, siblings, but they murdered each other for years and years. So I don't think I think we've handled diversity very well, very well. On individual basis, I'm sure we all say, if you've got friends who've got different points of view, you think, well, I won't go on that subject because I like my friend. But Christianity has really they murdered each other. Northern Ireland, we had wars. They were bombing in pubs and everywhere. The Catholics and the Protestants.
Yes. Well, the Pope is trying in his new visit now in Turkey and next to Lebanon to try to create of the many branches of Christianity more unity. And in a officially secular country as America is, so the motto in Latin is E pluribus unum, from many one, and the concept that we Jews are one nation, indeed, it has been a reason that people from left and right, from Ashkenazi and Sephardic with all of the arguments, are not killing each other. We don't have that history at all, not within the 12 tribes and not within the tribe divisions that we can describe of Israel today. So part of why we are one nation, including those Jews of India, Ethiopia, America, and Israel, is that we do not force each other to be what we are, and don't use force or weapons or violence. We use our power of persuasion to try to convince people. This morning, I learned from a law professor at the Hebrew University that while people all over the world learn based on Roman law, in Israel, we go back further and we learn from Hebrew law. And this is informing our sense of law and our sense of unity. And I think that Zionism is one of the unifying forces within Judaism in its sense of bringing the Jews together as a nation, as opposed to having Jews wherever they are practice the religion however their parents and grandparents and local tradition led them to do it. So there is a concept of Zionism in the unity of diverse populations, and we know, and the stories about the about things that Reuven and Shimon and Judah and Dan and Dinah all did were different and had different approaches, some more violent, not against Jews, but against Shechem, and some more pacifying, some more unifying. But this is a piece, I think, of what our Zionism is it leads us to feel that we are one nation and one people, as well as a broad variety of how we, or a diversity of how we observe and fulfill those aspects of being Jewish, being a part of the Jewish nation.
Jesse,
Yes.
I have to stop the recording and leave, but thank you.
Okay. I think we're done, and that's
Shabbat
great for
shalom.
today. I appreciate all of the contributions.